The battle of wizards and warriors continues with iron swords. The evil wizard Malkill will take the shape of the earth, wind, water, and fire. Farewell! The fate of the world is in your hands!
You're listening to the Piercing Wizard podcast, and I'm your host, Ryan Willett. I'm a professional body piercer with 20 years experience. I travel around the world teaching technique and safety classes, and I'm a member of the Association of Professional Piercers. Listen in as I talk to my friends and colleagues about our industry so we can all stay sharp. Okay, we just can't go longer than 6.5 hours.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
Don't leave me.
Welcome back to yet another episode of the Piercing Wizard podcast, first episode of 2025. We are going to talk about a couple of different subjects today. We are going to hit one or two from those previously submitted questions that we didn't get to on the last episode, and a couple other topics that are just on our mind. So before we get into it, is there anything that you would like to say, famous United States piercer Lola Slider?
Thank you to your country for having me for my first ever professional guest spot in America. I did my first guest piercing at your studio between Christmas and New Year, so we're going to talk a little bit about that experience once we get going.
Yeah, I was really happy with it. We can get into all that stuff. A couple of things that I want to plug before we really get into it, though. I'm going to be doing a couple of live seminars in early 2025, and I have one that's open for registration now in Quebec, Canada. So if you're interested in that, you can go to ryanpba.com and you can get some more information. That will be on Sunday, March 16th, 2025, and registration is open now.
What's your favorite Christina Aguilera song?
I guess Genie in a Bottle is the only one that I can think of.
Yeah.
What was the one from that Moulin Rouge movie? Or was it? It wasn't even Moulin Rouge. Apparently not.
Well, since we're on the subject of Christinas, you have a new video on Patreon, don't you?
I do.
It just came into my head just there.
Oh yeah, it's definitely not because I wrote it down on the notes.
No.
I have a new video at patreon.com/RyanPBA, all about Christina piercings, and I showcase two different examples of it on two pretty different anatomical variations. I talk about how I evaluate, how I mark, how I perform the piercing. I show two different piercings being performed. And a big part of the video is I talk about my preference between a curved barbell and an L-bar. So without giving away too much of it, do you have a preference for one over the other?
I don't offer Christina piercings.
Okay, well, there you go. I do offer Christina piercings, and I'm going to talk about why in the video. Do you want to talk about why you don't offer them?
Not really. So I did do them with both curves and L bars, and I had a period of experimentation in terms of technique, probably, overcomplicating things that didn't need to be that complicated. But for a while, I was doing like a punch and pierce technique for the Christina, which is going to be more prevalent using an L bar than a curve, where it wouldn't really have any function. I slowly stopped offering them over time because I feel like if you're just getting consistent bad healing results with a piercing, it just makes sense to slowly withdraw that service, whatever it is. And it wasn't the procedure that was problematic for me. It was just a piercing that often had difficulties healing.
Was it embedding issues for you?
A lot of damp issues.
Yeah.
And a lot of irritation issues, a lot of which I think stem from hair removal. But also the climate here is often in the high 90s for humidity, and I do think it does make a difference. Like, something that I stress to clients now is the importance of wearing like good quality breathable cotton underpants. Like, if you're wearing something that's like polyester and you have a Christina piercing, it's going to get swampy, for lack of a better word, when it's healing. So I think that's why I just kind of phased them out and stopped offering them. Other, vulva piercings, no problem, because the healing is a little bit faster. The Christina was among the slower piercings to heal, so that's why I kind of stopped offering it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Just from my location, I just wasn't loving the healing results that I was having.
Yeah, I have consistently good healing results with them, but I think it's because I'm in a different chapter of my of the way that I see Christina piercings. Like I used to see them kind of like maybe you did when we've talked about overcomplicating things before, the way that we'd done surface anchors in the past and all this stuff. And I used to think that Christina piercings were a lot more akin to a surface piercing. So when I was doing Christina's and I was thinking of them as a surface piercing and I was focusing on L-bars and probably overcomplicating it a little bit in my mind, I had more healing difficulties than how I see them now, which is very different. But I do want to leave a little bit of that for the video so people have an actual reason to sign up and watch it. So go ahead and check out that video all about Christina piercings, patreon.com/RyanPBA, and I'll tell you all about my method for them. So what I want to get into first, as far as like, the meat of the episode, is I want to talk about your experience piercing in the States, and like as the shop owner perspective and not like the supporting boyfriend kind of perspective. I thought you were great. The customers really responded well to you. You already got some really positive reviews. You got a 5-star review, I think, a day after you started piercing at the shop. So I see that as a really positive sign for the future. How did you feel about it? Because I know that as the co-worker side of it, as like the piercer in the next room over, we were kind of tripping on each other a little bit during the first day because I'm a control freak is a kind way to put it, but also we were kind of sharing some spaces and different stuff. So how did you feel?
I take that stuff on the chin pretty well, I think, because I know who you are. Like, people that know us privately know that we're disgustingly affectionate to each other, and just very, very gooey and hand-holdy and kissy. But at work, you're a very different person. Like, you're a professional work, Ryan, and I know that about you, and I think you know that about me. So, like when you have like things that you need me to do or any adjustments you need me to make, just like procedural stuff, like how you operate your studio, I think that all went really well. Like, neither of us are the kind to be like, you're being mean to me. Although I will absolutely say that at the end of the day to get you to buy me fries. Yeah, but in like a playful way. Like I wouldn't actually like take it serious. Like, I know that it comes from a place of not wanting your standards to change for any reason, like whether or not I'm dating the boss.
Well, yeah, but to be clear, like you don't have low standards. You have
it's just
exceedingly high standards.
Different operations of working.
Yeah.
Like different systems. And that's something that comes up when we do safe practices, is that there's more than one way to do the right thing. So it's just kind of making sure there's a consistent level of service throughout interactions in the studio.
Yeah.
So I think that went well. It was definitely like hitting the ground running and kind of like immediately needing to get to work. Like, we didn't really have time to do much of a transition period or anything like that. So I just kind of set up my little workspace with the stuff that I'm most used to working, to try and just make it feel as natural as possible to me. But it was great. Like, it's a fantastic studio. Like, it was nice getting to have a bit more space. My piercing room is quite small, so it was nice having a little bit more room. A big thing that I was not really expecting was that you and I have different definitions of like child. My studio is adults only. And so like I had said to you, like, I don't want to do like the kids' lobes appointments that you do, because it's not a service that I offer, and you're a lot better with little children than me.
To be fair,
like,
even Evan sometimes is a little outside of his comfort zone under a certain age. Like I typically take care of all the earlobes for kids under 10.
Yeah, because you're really good at that. But I did have to pierce basically like 14 and up.
Yeah.
So like I'm doing piercings on 14 and up when I'm used to doing like adults only. So when you're doing 14 and up, you obviously have parental consent, and you also have parents and guardians like watching. And that's something I'm not at all used to. So it all went completely fine, but that's definitely an extra layer of pressure in terms of like something that I didn't really think about or wasn't really expecting. Like, I didn't realize my very first appointment was going to be like piercing a 14-year-old in front of their mum. Yeah. So you're just like, it's a bit scary. So that was new, but like it all went fine. Very different experience to piercing in Glasgow. A lot of differences. And I also got pierced as well.
Yeah.
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 Off of you.
Yeah, well, thank you. If anyone who happens to follow me on social media saw the post, Lola has been asking me to do not exactly high nostrils, but not exactly like a standard height because you already have nostril piercings there. You wanted kind of like a medium high nostril, just a little bit higher. And I've been trying to like avoid it for months now. Like, maybe yes, maybe no, if we have time kind of thing. And on this trip, it was really like I just ran out of excuses. You also saw a pair of jewelry that you fell in love with. So it was like, well, all right, happy to do it. But just the way the trip lined up between work and holiday time and free time, we ended up doing them the day that we were bringing you back to the airport, the last day that you were there. And we basically like, you packed up your stuff and then we went to the shop to pierce your nostrils right before we left for the airport. So for people out there who already don't like driving into a big city, like I don't like driving into Boston. I especially don't like driving to the airport in Boston. Like whenever I go for myself, I take a shuttle. So it was the whole anxiety of having to drive to the airport in Boston combined with, okay, let's do some paired high nostrils, semi-high nostrils, combined with pierce your partner, and all those things were really nerve-wracking.
And my nose is not symmetrical.
Yeah, but most aren't. So like that's not really like a key factor. It's really just that like if I didn't do them well, even if nobody else noticed, I would notice for the rest of my life, and it would, you bring shame upon your house. So
You nailed it.
well, I was really happy because it could have gone a different way. So I pierced them what I would consider to be like the ultra extra careful method. Like I used clamps. I feel like I marked them well. I marked them on my first try, which is not something I always get on my paired nostrils. So I think that like the piercing gods out there were watching over me and guided my hands, and I'm really happy with how they came out.
I felt great. Well, obviously it was painful getting them done, but I felt physically great getting them done. And then on the trip home, I developed a travel cold. And within like 24 hours of having my nostrils pierced, I had to like stuff tissues up my nose to stop it streaming.
Yeah.
And it was just like not fun.
Yeah.
But they're fine.
Yeah, they look
I was
great.
just like, I can't believe the timing of this.
Yeah, I can't believe you picked out. So you picked out jewelry that I had just gotten in from BVLA. Like,
It's pretty.
yes, I admit that they are. That's why I ordered them to sell them to someone.
I
But
offered to give you money.
I know. But like when you pierce your partner, it's one of those things where it's like the heart wants what the heart wants, and how can you say no? So I think it went really well. I'm excited to have you back. You're going to be back at the end of February, and we have kind of like a wait list already going for you for clients. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm really hoping by the end of this year that it's a little bit more normalized, and we can get you over for longer periods of time, and more and more comfortable in the shop for you. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really happy with it. Like so much work went into being able to get you to come over and pierce in the States that I'm just so relieved that it went well.
Yeah.
Also, you got some American tips.
I did.
Yeah.
I've never gotten tips before, so
Yeah.
that was exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a very different experience dealing with the client base. Like I was surprised in a way at how easy it was, and surprised at how much input I was allowed to give
What do you mean?
in terms of like people would be like, well, what do you think? And then they would actually like go with my suggestion.
Yeah. It's a huge difference between the UK, Scottish, Glaswegian mentality. Like I think when I've obviously never pierced clients in your studio, but I've hung out quite a bit, and I've watched the process for how people select what they want to get, and how people react to getting it. And it's a very different experience. Like I think when people come in to at least my studio in the States, they're putting a lot of trust into the professional being their tastemaker. Like I want something in my ear, might be as much input as they give you, and then you're picking all these things. I think when people come in your studio, they've already done a lot of research. They've already kind of gotten like, I want this piercing, and I think I might want this jewelry, and they seem a lot more like rigid in what they're requesting.
So this is one of those things where I don't mind saying it because I don't consider it to be an insult, and I don't think people from Glasgow consider it to be an insult either. But I think people in this city are naturally combative, as in like they will question everything. If you're in a position of authority, and when we're at work, we're in a position of authority, anyone in a position of authority, they will fight you even when they don't need to. Like, sometimes it's every step of the way. And it's funny, like, to try and explain it, but it's like, imagine if, like, and it's not every encounter, but a lot of encounters where every single little instruction you give is met with resistance. By the end of the day, some days you're like, please, can someone just do what I'm asking? Just one person.
Yeah.
So it's like, working in your studio, everyone was like, yep, sure, okay, you want me here, great. And nobody was combative. Like, nobody was combative. It was weird, but it was also faster paced. Like, your appointment times are quicker than mine, so there was a lot more of a speedy pace to it. So it was very, very different. But I definitely noticed a difference in the people, how they shop, how they interact, what they want from you is definitely different. But yeah, it will be a shock to no one that sometimes people in Scotland are combative.
Yeah. Well, we can check in on it every now and then and give you some more updates about Lola's adventures of piercing in the U.S.
Sometimes you think I'm combative.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know where that comes from.
Topical in the news, we are recording this on January 20th, and I don't want to make any of this about politics, but there was a big to-do for people in the U.S. not having access to TikTok for a whole half a day, where some people were just feeling like it was the end of the world because that's kind of their primary platform. I'm not going to knock anybody for what platform they use, but something that we both talked about over the last couple days is how risky it can be. To put all your eggs in one basket. If the way that you interact with the majority of your base, your supporters, your clients is through one platform, what happens when that platform makes significant changes or when you don't have access to that platform anymore? So whether it's TikTok, whether it's Etsy, whether it's whatever platform you're using, I think you need to have some redundancies. I think you need to diversify your platforms quite a bit. And I think what's happened with TikTok over the last few days should really be a wake-up call for a lot of body piercers. If that's the only way that you can communicate with your clients, what happens when that avenue is removed for you? So what are some of your thoughts on it? So
I'm a miserable old woman, and no, don't disagree with me, it's fine. And I remember... Too late. I remember having this conversation with you 5 years ago, and then 3 years ago, that, I'm not gonna bother with TikTok, and, why? Well, it's just, it just seems like at any moment the rug can just be pulled out from under you, and that's what happened when they changed what was it called, the creator fund that they did or something. They used to reward creators for viewerships, then that changed to selling products. And it just seems very not very stable. You're not on any kind of solid ground. Things can change from under you at a day's notice. It seems that they look at the creators as just as disposable as the consumers. Yeah, so in that sense, it wasn't something that I ever just wanted to engage in. And I don't think there's anything wrong with piercers that went down that route and were incredibly successful. But the smart ones will have other horses they can jump onto at any time. And I think that you kind of you hit the nail on the head when you say having all your eggs in one basket. But what I want to put in listeners' minds is when you teach your seminars, you do just as, a cursory check just to authenticate that the people that are going are actual piercers, and you ask them to submit something. And there are a lot of piercers that have no proof that they work as piercers. Yeah. And it's shocking. And then some will say, well, my state or my country doesn't have licensing or doesn't require insurance or anything like this. But they don't have a business card. They don't have a website. They don't have any kind of promotion. They don't have any social media presence outside of something like TikTok. Yeah. So I think that it's a good opportunity if you're in that situation where maybe if you've only been piercing for less than 5 years and you've never worked without TikTok existing. It's a good reminder that you should have other horses you can jump on at any time in the race.
Yeah.
If something like this happens again, which it probably will. And I do feel for people that have an emotional connection to the app, because like the last decade of my life has been posted on Instagram. Of course I would be upset if it went down. Like, so I don't want to make fun of people that are upset about it. Like, this is how we communicate with a lot of our friends and family and clients. So I definitely get that there's an emotional connection, but you just have to remember that you're being sold something when you're on there, or you're the product when you're on there. And it's important to just be mindful of the fact that the people that own the app are not your friends, and they do view you as pawns in what's clearly a larger game that's going on.
Yeah, something that I like to do is anytime a new platform gets a little bit of traction, or it gets like a significant launch or something, you know, Blue Sky or Threads or whatever platforms, whether they succeed or whether they fail, I'm going to grab my username on all of them. I have Ryan PBA on all of those platforms, because platforms are going to change and audiences are going to move. So I want to be able to be ready for that. TikTok won't be the last platform. So I know that sometimes people put so much work into learning a platform that it becomes kind of second nature for them. Like, you are incredible with Reels. You're very comfortable. You make like really entertaining and really captivating Reels, and you've got an audience and a subscriber base that responds to that. And you've
Hair
got
and ass.
well,
Hair and ass.
I mean, I respond to it. But you have, I think it was 57,000 followers on Instagram right now. And that's because you've gotten comfortable with the platform. You've made content kind of geared towards the platform. And I know that lots of other piercer/creators have gotten very comfortable on TikTok. You know, shout out to Casey Morrison, Cassie Lopez, Luis Garcia, doing a lot of work on TikTok, like sharing piercing information, making it entertaining, keeping people engaged. And to have that platform removed is also removing the consumer getting access to that good information, that entertaining information that also teaches them about quality piercing. So it would be a shame to have all that lost. But at the same time, try to diversify, try to share some of that information, even if it's just reposting information onto other platforms. You know, a little bit on Facebook, a little bit on Instagram, or wherever you feel like your customers live. You know, backups, like having your own website. You know, like I have a ryanpba.com, because if every other social media platform disappeared tomorrow, I would still want to be able to maintain my own platform. Like, I'm very tied into the Patreon kind of world right now. And if Patreon was pulled out from under me tomorrow, I would be devastated, because I've made so much content for that platform specifically. Where, yeah, maybe I could pivot and I could put that same content on like OnlyFans or something like that, but that's not a platform that I'm familiar with, comfortable with. So just diversify yourself and strengthen yourself and protect yourself against, like, you know, maybe these things being gone tomorrow in the blink of an eye.
I'd subscribe to your OnlyFans.
Thank you. Even if it's just piercing information and not like my butt. Sorry.
So just to give an example, probably one of the most prolific piercing TikTokers of the zeitgeist is Lynn Lowhide. And you might think, oh, they're, you know, the ultimate TikTok piercer example. They have diversification. They have their blog that they do. They have their website. They have other streams of social media, and are constantly hopping between those things to promote and cross-promote work. And I think that that's something that all young piercers need to be doing. You can start a website from like $20 a month.
Yeah.
It's not expensive.
Yeah.
And it's, even if it seems like it's hard, I'm awful at that stuff, and I still managed to put one together.
Yeah, you made a really nice website all by yourself with just templates, essentially.
When you think about the amount of money people spend on like various digital subscriptions and things, setting up a website for your business, especially if you're a self-employed piercer, is next to nothing, and it could really save your ass if things go down and you still have something that's exclusively yours.
Even if it's just essentially a digital business card, one page, this is my name, this is how you can contact me, this is where I work and my hours. Like, even something that simple can be a huge benefit to you as a professional. You
know what I think it is? I think a lot of people think I'm not worth it. Like, I think there are piercers out there that are like, oh, well, I'm just a little guy, you know, like I'm just, you know, here doing my thing or working out of a shop. And it's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have to you have to take yourself seriously in order for other people to take you seriously sometimes. So
Yeah.
I think that people should be aware, like, you're a professional, you are worth it. Give your business the respect give yourself the respect that you deserve at work.
Right. And the whole thing about, like, you want to be able to control the means of production in a way. Like, I want, this is going to sound corny, but I want me to be the brand. I don't want to be supporting someone else's brand. I don't want to have all of my content live on TikTok and then it's like, it's TikTok. It's a TikTok commodity. I want it to be Ryan's information. So, like, if I'm posting information, I feel like people have a good sense of who I am as a professional on all the different platforms that I'm posting on. And I'm not just seen as, like, one of many that you kind of follow and scroll past on one app. Like, I want to be seen as a professional and not just seen as a TikToker. Not to knock it. You know, I also don't want to be seen as just an Instagram piercer, as just a Facebook piercer, as just a whatever. I want to be seen as a respectable professional, and I want to be on as many platforms as possible because that means I get to reach as wide of an audience as possible. Anything else you want to hit on that?
No.
Okay. So why don't you talk about this? Because I think that that's pretty cool, the invitations to some of these 2025 conferences for us.
So naturally, we will be exhausting the industry with our presence for yet another year.
Sorry.
You are going to 6 conferences.
I
Ryan's World Tour 2025.
Here's the thing, is I still had to decline some because there are so many conferences now.
Everyone wants to dance with the princess.
Well, it's not that it's me. It's that I'm very privileged to have the experience that I have because not only have I been piercing for, I like to say 25 years, but it's more than that, but I've been an instructor for more than 10 years. I've been to lots and lots of conferences, so I know the difference between a good class, an entertaining class, a beneficial class, and ones that are maybe a little bit, you know, need a little bit more development is a way to put it. But so I get asked to do a lot of conferences, and I wish that I could say yes to even more, but I think that there's kind of a conference season. I think a lot of them are clustered around the autumn for whatever reasons, financial reasons, logistic reasons, and it's a little bit tough to be able to say yes to all the things that I would like to.
So I'll be doing 4 this year, which is a heavy year for me because I'm not a machine like you. Your first stop is going to be Brazil.
Yeah, APP Brazil. So I've done GEP before. I've done the GEP conference before, but there's also APP Brazil, which I haven't had the opportunity to do before. So I'll be doing that. I believe it's in May of 2025, and really excited. It's a really fantastic group of piercers in that community, and I've always had a fantastic time every time I've gone to Brazil.
And then we will be going to APP, instructing again. This will be my first year as a senior instructor.
Senor Lola.
Senior instructor.
Yeah.
Which I'm excited about because I thought I was going to be a junior instructor forever. So I'm excited that this year I'm a senior instructor. Makes me feel very fancy.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've put in the work and you deserve it. Like, there are times where I kind of feel like sometimes we're seen as like the couple and not the individuals sometimes, and I think that sometimes that can be a detriment to maybe you sometimes because it's seen as like, well, you know, Ryan will already have a hotel room, so we'll add on Lola, and I really don't like feeling that way. I like you being respected because of your achievements, your work, your capabilities, and I'm really happy to see you finally get that senior instructor designation.
So, I mean, for people that haven't known us both for a long time, they might not be familiar with the fact that I was instructing before we were together, before we were even friends, really. So this is something that I've been doing a long time, and I'm not under any illusions that there probably aren't, you know, people out there that think, oh, you know, Lola gets these chances because she's dating Ryan. But at the same time, those people are wrong.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't really dwell on it because I know what goes on behind the scenes, and I know that I don't get special treatment because of you. There's things you're asked to do that I'm not asked to do. There's even been not a lot of stuff, but there's been some stuff that I've been asked to do that you've not been asked to do.
You got to teach in the Uber room last year at conference.
Yeah, I did.
That was awesome.
So that was a really cool experience, getting to do my bridge class, and I think there was like 300 or 400 people.
It was definitely over 300, but I don't know how many exactly.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
So I was really, really excited to get the opportunity, and I tried my best to nail it, and I'm glad that I get another opportunity this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that you're right, that there's probably people that think that or don't appreciate my value, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know those people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the other thing too, is like you don't don't shrink from those scenarios. You show up and you're like, I'm going to show you who I am. And I always appreciated that about you, and I really respect you as an instructor.
It's because I'm aggressive.
Well, yeah, it's because you're Glaswegian.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think we're meant to talk about exactly which classes we've been asked to instruct at APP this year, because I don't think they've officially announced them yet, but I know that we are allowed to say that we have been asked. So really excited. We'll both be teaching multiple classes this year at the APP conference in Las Vegas. So look forward to that. And we'll also be in the expo again this year, so looking forward to that too. Mm-hmm. August, we'll be at, it's August this year, right?
I think so.
For BMX. We'll be at BMX in Berlin again this year. Really looking forward to that. I don't even think we've really thought about or planned which classes we'll be doing yet. BMX is a really cool conference because they don't put a lot of pressure on you to dial in exactly what you're doing as far in advance as some conferences. Like, they might ask you far in advance if you're available, but I think they leave it a lot more to the instructors about, like, what do you want to teach? How do you want to teach it? What structure of a class do you want to do? So I always really like BMX for that reason, because it's your imagination let loose as a class, and it's always really fun. We'll both be at UKAPP.
10th anniversary conference this year.
Really?
Yeah, 10th anniversary. And you're going to try and be a member?
Yeah, well, yeah, so that's the thing, is I think that we should join the UKAPP, and when I say we, I mean my studio in New Hampshire in the USA, because you'll be there. You're an active UKAPP member, a former board member, an important part of that community, and I don't want to disregard that. I don't want anyone to think, is Lola potentially working in a studio that doesn't meet UKAPP requirements? So I think, just to simplify it, I think we should join the UKAPP, and I think that would be really great.
There's probably going to be a member gift. And
yeah.
If you're join, you get the gift.
I was so jealous of that Mr. Sebastian action figure last year.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
Yeah.
They've been killing it. So I'm I don't know, because I'm not on the inside track, but there could well be another member gift, and I can't wait to see how they plan on topping the Mr. Sebastian doll.
I don't know if you could,
great.
but
no.
yeah, I'm excited. So watch out, UKAPP. Ryan's a coming. And this is a really special one. I want you to talk about this one in particular, because I'm really happy that you're going to be there.
So I'm going to go to Poland for the Polish conference
Yeah.
for the first time. So this is a really special one for me, because I have to work a lot at my studio. I don't get a lot of time to travel. I don't get a lot of time to do extra conferences beyond the ones that I've been kind of traditionally doing for the last handful of years. And the folks at, what's the official name? Is it PP?
Professional Piercers of Poland.
PPP.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the folks at PPP have asked me the last several years to go and instruct, and I haven't been able to. And last year, Wojciech, who's one of their organizers, basically said to me, like, well, the offer's there, the invitation's there. If you ever change your mind, just let us know. And he was also a big supporter for my visa application, just helping me with all of the invites that he sent me over the years and things. So it was really important to me to show up for Poland and make it up to him for everything that he's done for me without asking for anything back. So it's really important to me to go there and try and do my best to give the attendees a good experience, because I think the Polish community has been really supportive of me.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to going for the first time. And I've only heard good things about it.
It's a fantastic conference. It's really, really fun. It's in a really unique venue. The city is amazing. I really enjoyed the food and everything. So I'm really excited that I'll be there again. I'm really double excited that I'll be there with you. So really looking forward to that. And I am going to be in Japan. I believe that will be in October. They don't have the exact date set, but this will be their second conference, and they're kind of promoting it as an Asian piercer meetup, not just for Japanese piercers. Last year's conference, the first conference, was really amazing to watch online. The community that they brought together, the information and the presenters and all that stuff. So I'm really honored to be invited to Japan. I've always felt like a special connection to Japanese culture. I've been to Japan 4 or 5 times at this point, and I've loved every minute that I've been there. So really excited to be in Japan.
So it's a lot of travel.
Yeah.
And I always want to take a moment when we talk about doing these kind of almost back-to-back dates that this is something that's possible for us for a variety of reasons. One being we're in a long distance relationship and we try and grab every opportunity to see each other that we can. So that means a lot of the time going to events together. We're also both approved speakers. I think, well, you're an approved APP speaker. And I think I just got approved this year. Like I got an invitation to be approved.
Basically, the way there is there's a list of instructors where you know that you can airdrop in somebody like a Brian Skelly or somebody like a Becky Dill, and they can teach a really good class. They can maybe help with any sort of questions that might come up about potential maybe APP membership or how you do different things in different countries. And it's great to have you on that list, because now conferences like sister organizations for the APP can request anyone on that list, and the APP can provide funding for a flight and a hotel to send that instructor there to help strengthen their conferences or to help support their conferences.
So, it's just to put people in mind that like we aren't just flying around the world with some kind of like limitless
jet setting.
Resource. Yeah, jet
We're
setting.
not jet setting. We are working.
I like to be transparent about it, because sometimes I feel like it's going to make people think, well, why can't I? There's some people that can barely afford to go to one conference a year, some that go every other year. And I've said before, like I've only ever been to APP as an instructor. The first year that I went, I was co-instructing with you. And if it wasn't for getting the conference pass, being the junior instructor, like I wouldn't have been able to afford to go. Like I'd never been before. So for an international attendee like myself, like I wouldn't have been able to afford to go. So I just like to be transparent with the fact that it would be wildly unreasonable for just like a regular person to go and do all of this stuff. Like that's not normal. The situation that we're in is very unusual. So I just want people to keep in mind that if you can make it to one, even if it's not a conference, even if it's just a meetup, a gathering, just one a year to help enrich the kind of social side of your piercer brain, as well as the analytical professional side, I think that's good for you. But that's more than enough.
Well, something else that just one last thing about conferences is a lot of times we present it as these conferences will make you a stronger piercer. But I think a big part of it that we don't talk about often enough is how the individual attendees like strengthen the organization and strengthen the conferences. So if you feel like you might be in maybe like an underserviced or an underutilized community within piercing, you're going to make any event that you attend, any event that you contribute to, engage with, you're going to be making them stronger. So it's all the opinions, it's all the information of the community that strengthen the rest of the community. So I think it's really important. If this is the year where maybe you're thinking about going to your first conference, whichever one it is, I say go for it. Like do whatever you can to get there. Take advantage of any sort of support, take advantage of any sort of scholarships, any sort of help, and I want to see you there. So we are going to kind of wind down this episode talking about an issue that was submitted through that question form. So on the last episode, we did a lot of like rapid fire questions, kind of shorter subjects. This one, we're going to chat about it just a little bit longer. Let me just go ahead and read you the full question that was submitted so I don't miss any of the nuance of it. How do you handle interacting with clients who are not doing anything out of line enough to fire them, but are unpleasant enough to work with that you dread seeing their name pop up on your schedule? Because that's something that you and I have talked about privately more than once.
Yeah. It's definitely, that was a question that like really resonated with me, because there's been a trend of that being like a really long-standing issue of mine that I've struggled with. And I think like letting clients get under your skin a little bit is something that many of us struggle with. And I think that it's almost easier, though will obviously be just as unpleasant, dealing with a customer that's completely out of line, that's completely rude, because you can just tell them to leave. You can say that you don't want to service them anymore, and you can withdraw service. But it's situations where someone is close to that, but they're not quite there, that you don't feel like you have the authority to say, your behavior is inappropriate, because it's not. And for people thinking like, well, what do you mean? I went to a class that Bethra Sumsky did at BMXNet last year, which was about this very subject, about dealing with difficult clients, basically. And I feel like even saying difficult clients out loud is taboo in the industry because we're not supposed to admit we have any.
Right.
And that's something that resonates again with me very strongly because I've seen colleagues try to kind of vent about these negative experiences and just immediately be shot down and told, well, you should have managed the space better. You should have done something better. There's a reason this is your fault and not anybody else's. And I feel like it just overlooks the glaringly obvious fact that difficult people are everywhere. The people that go into, a coffee shop and aren't very nice to the barista, they also go and get piercings. And they go to restaurants and they go everywhere. So, it seems kind of ludicrous that it's embarrassing or taboo for us to admit that sometimes they come into piercing shops. And so going to Bethra's talk on the subject was actually probably one of the more emotional classes that I've been to, where I just felt so relieved to be around other piercers saying, this is something that's happened to me, this is something that's happened to me. And when it got to me, said the issue that I was having with someone, that everyone kind of was like, oh my God, that's terrible. I felt so validated and so relieved that I wasn't just being crazy. So I think that it's actually a really important subject and definitely one of the most challenging aspects of our job, because a huge part of social media marketing now is come and see me because I'll be nicer to you than any piercer you've ever had before. That's the subtext to a lot of the posts and things that I see. And there's nothing wrong with promoting yourself like that, but I think that at some point it does make clients feel like I can come in here and I can behave any way that I want and it's reasonable and you can't tell me otherwise because I'm the customer and I'm.
So here's the other. I don't know how many people out there might have seen a show called Hannibal, based on the Hannibal Lecter character, but it was a show that I liked a lot. You were kind of mixed on it, but there was this one scene, I think in the third season, Gillian Anderson played a therapist, a psychiatrist on the show, and she brought up this question when it said, when you see a helpless animal, is your instinct to nurture it or to crush it? And I think that sometimes people can look at service providers in the same way. Is if you're nice, lots of people will respond to that. If you respect clients, which we all should, sight unseen, we should always start with respect. Sometimes clients can kind of see that and say, I'm going to push, and I'm going to push, and I'm going to see what I can get out of them because they're just too nice. And I'm not telling you to not be nice. My goal is to make everybody leave with a big smile on their face. I want to be as nice as possible and certainly always respectful. But sometimes I also do have to be a little bit more firm in what I'm offering and how I'm offering it, because people will always try to take advantage of a service provider. Not everyone, but there will always be a person out there who thinks not necessarily I want to get it a little bit cheaper, but maybe I want to get it a little bit faster. I want to be given priority treatment. I want to be bumped to the front of the line. I want someone to stay late for me. I want someone to respond to me outside of work hours, even if it's not related to an emergency. Their convenience is sometimes their priority over their humanity. So I don't know, how do you deal with a customer like that without giving specifics, because I don't want anyone to feel singled out?
So it's something that I've been actively working on. And when I say actively working on, I mean I've been putting into practice stuff that I've talked about with my therapist, where I've relayed some of the issues and frustrations that I have. And we've kind of done exercises what would you say to them? And kind of going through what I would like to say. And then I actually did it this last week. I had a situation with a client that actually went brilliantly. And I was so happy and so relieved that I said something. I've been in so many situations with clients where I've been I wish I'd have said no. I wish I could go back in time and avoid this situation. But it's too late before you know it. And I actually had one of those situations where I had a not great experience with a client. They were okay, but without saying what it was, they behaved in a way that was detrimental to everyone else in the studio. And I was able to have a quiet word with them and be like, listen, this is how this affects me and the other staff and the other appointments, and I want to help, but we can't have you doing this specific thing. And they actually completely got it and were super receptive and didn't feel attacked or upset, which is my big fear. I didn't want anyone to feel attacked or upset. And I just felt so happy that I said something. So I guess my advice would be maybe give it a try instead of being terrified of what the response will be. If you're going to be in that state of panic every time you see someone's name booked in with you, is it worse to just kind of like deal head on with that and try and chat with them about it honestly? I mean, I don't think I'm going to be brave enough in every situation to do that, but I felt so proud of myself for doing it, even just this one time and it working, because I've been in so many situations the past few years, and I think that part of it comes down to the culture of therapy speak that we're in. And what I mean by therapy speak is when people say things like, when people act inappropriately and then say, well, you can't invalidate my feelings. And you're like, ma'am, you're behaving inappropriately. You can't act this way. So I think that also terrifies us as well, because, you know, we're trying to balance making sure that we facilitate for our clients and meet their emotional needs. But we have to acknowledge that sometimes their emotional needs go beyond what's reasonable in a professional setting. And that's difficult. Like, that's real difficult. And it's also going to be difficult for different piercers. Like, that's something that you kind of have to work out where your comfort level is. But I'm not sure that the answer is just saying okay forever, no matter how bad it gets.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a spectrum. You definitely have to have a nuance sensor, because it's not always someone intentionally being rude. It's not always someone intentionally trying to get special treatment. Sometimes there are whatever factors at play. But I really like to establish non-vague boundaries with people. If somebody pushes me in a direction that I'm not comfortable with, personally or professionally, I can say, well, I'm sorry, that's just not something that we can do for you, or that's not something we can do for you today. It really depends on the scenario. Sometimes people might want to get squeezed in when you just don't have availability, and sometimes people might like maybe stay late or cut their lunch, and that might be okay for some piercers. I've done that. I'm sure you've done that. Because sometimes it's the appropriate thing to do for that scenario. But when it becomes something where a client, or especially a regular, knows that they can kind of push a little bit, one step, and it is that whole thing, to go back to another cliche of like, give them an inch and they try to take a mile. Sometimes you just have to establish firm boundaries so that people know, like, you're offering something within these professional limitations, and it's really not something that I want to wiggle outside of.
So I think, and this is something I'm sure I've said before, but I think there is also a kind of subtle element of sexism or gender bias in how a lot of members of the public interact with service providers, where if they're dealing with a male colleague and they say no, it's no. Whereas if it's a female colleague or femme-presenting colleague, they hear no, and what they really hear is try again, try harder, rephrase it, put the question to them again, and we'll push and push a bit further. And I remember one situation I'm not particularly proud of, where I was dealing with a customer that just wouldn't stop questioning my every opinion. And eventually I was like, well, would you like to speak to Ryan? Because, he has a lot of experience in this. And you basically told them the exact same thing as me. And then they just were like, okay, cool. And then they stopped. And in the moment I was like, I don't know what else to do to get them to just like drop this. So I did feel like a little bit cowardly in saying like, right, I'll get Ryan to tell them and then they'll stop. But at the same time, I didn't know, like, I was trying my best to just give them the correct information and they just weren't believing me. So
I've heard the exact same thing from Lily specifically.
Yeah.
She's gotten it where she's needed basically me or Evan to say the exact same thing, because sometimes people they just don't hear because of gender bias. And what I try to do now to maybe subtly correct that behavior for someone, where next time maybe they won't be as prone to have that bias. Now what I like to do is just kind of say like, oh, well, what did Lily tell you? Because I usually just trust in Lily's opinion.
Yeah.
And then if they're like, well, Lily said this, and be like, yeah, that's exactly what I would say. Lily, you're correct. And then I would just kind of leave it. And what I want to do is I want to reinforce that Lily is an authority. Like, yeah, maybe I'm also an authority in a different role, but like, everybody in my shop is going to be giving the same answer, and I want to look at everyone's answer with the same level of respect.
Yeah, and you've always done that with me on the rare occasion that that's come up, is you've always tried to use your position to reinforce my professional like expertise and information. which I think is like a really important thing for piercers in your position to do. And even like taking away gender from it, I do the same thing with my apprentice, Jordan. Like, you know, Jordan's a boy, and if he has an opinion or gives a client some information that's correct and they ask for a second opinion, I do make sure to say, yep, Jordan was correct in giving you this information, like he's exactly right there, and just reinforce like his knowledge so that he feels validated, and it helps build trust with the client as well. So I think that's a really important thing to do when you're asked to give a second opinion. But I think that when it comes to dealing with like difficult clients, there are more situations where someone is likely to just push and push and push when they're dealing with a service provider who's feminine.
Yeah, well, so you don't want to create a negative precedent that you'll be forced to go along with on a future visit. So, like, if we can give a couple of pieces of advice of like what you might want to do in one of these scenarios versus some of the things that you might want to not do in some of these scenarios. Like, a good thing to equate it to is people asking for a deal, asking for a price break or something. I've had those problems before where if somebody comes in and you're like, okay, the thing costs $80, and they're like, would you do it for $70? There have been scenarios where I've been like, well, I can do another option for $70. But like in my studio, we have a very firm thing of the price is the price. If you picked something that's a little bit outside of your price range, rather than just giving it to you for less, I'm going to say like, well, here are the things that are within your price range. You know, like I don't want to make it seem like I'm trying to shake all of the change out of someone's pockets. That's not what I'm trying to do. But if you give someone a deal, they're going to come in next time expecting that same deal. Same thing if you're giving them free aftercare, if you're staying late, if you're appointment only and someone's like, well, but can't you just squeeze it in without an appointment? Like all those things are going to set potentially a precedent that you're not going to be able to live up to on the future visit, or if you do try to live up to it, it's going to be a negative for you and for your day. So what would you want to do instead? Like, I think it's great that you just took someone into a private area and you're like, this is something that's kind of a negative impact on us, so we want you to be aware of the behavior so that we can still service you and still make you happy, but these are some things that we just can't have going on in our professional environment. So how would you phrase it? Something to do versus something to not do?
So I don't want to like, say specifically what it was, because I wouldn't want anybody to feel, embarrassed or anything like that. But I just kind of addressed the incident to say, so I remember last time you were in, this happened, and I don't feel like I'll be able to proceed with your piercing today under the same circumstances, because I feel that it's a risk. It's a safety risk for me. It's a safety risk for yourself. And I think that has to come first. So is this going to be possible for you to do without a repeat of what happened last time? And kind of put it to them as more of an offering, instead of saying, I'm not going to do this for you, saying, I would love to service you, but I can't quite do it under these conditions. Are you going to be okay making that adjustment? And kind of putting it to them in a way that doesn't make them feel like I'm trying not to do the work. Like, I want to do the work at the end of the day. And they were like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I totally understand. And I was like, and we talked about it a little bit more and came up with a couple of ways to manage what it was that they were feeling and how it was that they were acting. And I think I was really lucky talking to someone that was receptive to that. But I also felt really glad for saying something, because I've been in so many situations where I didn't say something and it has like ticked over to multiple visits, and by that point you can't walk it back. Because it's been 5-6 visits. And I remember having an ongoing kind of conversation with my therapist about a particular customer who was making me very anxious every time that they were booked in for a very prolonged period of time. And we were coming up with things. They were like, what would you like to say to them? And there was a phrase that I used that they were like, that's perfect, which was, I've become uncomfortable with the way that you engage with the service. And then using that as a lead in to what the specific issue is. So I think about that a lot now. I'm uncomfortable, or I'm not very comfortable with the way that you're engaging with the service. And present it as I still want to serve you, but let's try and work on this to make it a little bit more pleasant for everyone involved,
Yeah.
And I also think that the terrifying thing in those situations is, what if they just blow up? Like, I think that's what we're all afraid of. What if they just blow up?
Or you get that 1-star review the day after.
But I think if it's that bad, sometimes it's worth the risk. Like if it's that, but at least they'll stop coming in. Like if it's really that bad, then maybe it is worth it, because I'm sure I've said this on here before, but I have hidden behind a desk from someone before. It was quite a couple of years ago now, but I remember seeing somebody coming up the stairs and just being like, I can't deal with this person today. And I just said, I'm not here. And I hid underneath the desk while they were on the other side of the desk. And the person on the reception was just like, yep, nope, they're not here today. And I was just like, oh, I'm such a fucking loser. Like, I'm such a fucking loser. I'm a grown woman. I'm hiding under a desk. So I absolutely get this particular problem. As someone with a lot of anxiety issues as well, you do build it up and you build it up. So I know that feeling of where you see a name and I don't know if this translates in American, but it's like your asshole just drops out of your body. Like you spiritually, you have a prolapse. That's the exact feeling.
Spiritual prolapse.
You have a spiritual prolapse.
Okay.
So you could say, sir or madam, I've started to experience a spiritual prolapse every time I see your name in my diary. And I just want to, I know that there are some piercing enthusiasts that listen to this, and I do want to stress that these aren't common situations.
No, not
but
at all.
They're, there's more and more of them happening, I think.
I think anyone who works in anything that can be considered a service industry will know exactly what we're talking about.
If you've ever worked with the public, whether it's in a supermarket or in a restaurant, there'll be a name that pops up or someone that comes in where you just think, this isn't going to be easy.
Right.
Like, strap in.
Yeah.
So, I think, like, always taking a moment to recognize that it's a job. There's going to be days at work that aren't going to be the best day ever. It's just a job. And trying to be brave where you can and say, I'm not super comfortable with this. It's not what we would normally do, so I'm going to say no to that. And just hearing it and saying it out loud and realizing that it is reasonable. Practice those phrases so that the words don't struggle to come out, because there have been more times that I've regretted not saying something.
You know what my favorite aspect of my job these days, whatever my job is, piercer, shop owner, educator, whatever it might be, is conflict resolution. And that was one of the most challenging things to get comfortable with. Not to say that I'm like a monk and I can resolve every conflict. There are some where I have done horribly bad, and I have not serviced the customer through my conflict resolution. I have not serviced myself or my business properly through my conflict resolution. But it's really how you see conflict and how it makes you feel inside, because it can be a minor conflict, it can be a major conflict. And I think that people's reaction will be kind of based on that scale. Like there's the obvious red line stuff, like someone being sexually inappropriate or whatever your red line is in your studio. But there are lots of things that don't get up to that red line that can still be a conflict. And how do you resolve that? How do you, continue servicing a client, continue being able to carry on with your work day in a comfortable way, continue servicing everyone else and taking care of your coworkers and all that stuff. So conflict resolution can be something really difficult to get comfortable with. And I'm really proud of you for talking about the fact that you've discussed it with a therapist. Like therapy has been massively beneficial to my life, personally and professionally. So if something like these scenarios makes someone feel that anxiety in their belly, or if they feel like they have the beginnings of a spiritual prolapse, maybe think about what you can do to make yourself more comfortable with healthy conflict resolution.
Yeah.
Ones that are based on respect, but ones that do take work to get comfortable with.
I think that's what it does come down to, is conflict resolution skills. And that's what I think I've been trying to work on without really realizing it. I think that there's a lot of us that we do have terrible conflict resolution skills, and our go-to is just get them served. Just deal with them, get them served, get them out, even if it's horrible for you. But if you're in that situation, we've all been in this situation where you then go to your next client and you're stressed and you're shaky and you're not really paying attention to what your next client's saying or wanting done because you're in this state of panic. So I've really started to think, and I think that that's what influenced me to do something when I had this situation last week, was because I was like, this is going to affect the whole rest of my day. If this goes badly, this is going to affect the whole rest of my day and every other client. So you have to kind of step outside of the moment a little bit, look at the whole day, look at the whole week and think, this could be a blip, or this could be like a stain on the whole rest of the week. So you kind of have to choose what you want it to be.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm going to be practicing this year, is just trying to get better at having those little moments where you just say no and that's enough. That, you know, it doesn't have to be, well, maybe, or, you know, maybe I could do this. No, the answer is just no, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And just kind of like standing up to those people that kind of push a little bit too hard.
It's really like that you just don't want to reinforce bad behavior.
Yeah.
So whether it's people who have had pets or kids or whatever, like, you know that reinforcing bad behavior will only bring more bad behavior.
So write the phrase down, I've become uncomfortable with the way that you're engaging with this service. And then write what exactly it is. Is it that they're constantly late? Is it that they're constantly haggling? Is it that they're constantly
disrespectful
to staff? Is it that they're constantly ignoring the instructions that you're giving them? Like, it could be, these are the little things that I think people are talking about when they say, you know, like, clients that are becoming, you know, they're not really behaving badly enough to say, okay, you have to leave, but it's behaving in a way that exhibits such a pattern of disrespect that it becomes hard to ignore. And I think there's also many situations where people don't realize what it is that they're doing. Maybe they don't have a lot of experience in these surroundings, and they're not aware that what they're doing is inappropriate. So yeah, just, you know, try and be brave and practice confronting the situation a bit more. That's what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about headbutting someone.
No, you're not?
No, I'm not.
Oh, that changes everything.
I'm talking about verbal correction.
I did headbutt.
Oh,
yeah,
okay, yeah.
So.
You give him a bonk. Well, my absolute favorite phrase for the year is spiritual prolapse.
Like, I know that there are people that are going to be listening to this that are like, yes, I have felt my asshole fall out of my body.
Yeah.
And they know the exact feeling.
The Piercing Wizard podcast, helping you stuff your spiritual asshole back into your body since 2025.
Are you suffering from a spiritual prolapse? Has your asshole fallen out of your body? This is the Piercing Wizard podcast.
Yeah. Better trademark that as fast as possible. Well, okay, so for 2025, I think we're both going to try to focus on being a little bit more positive on the podcast too. I don't know if we will be or not, but I know that, you know, I have heard a little bit of criticism about the show that we're always kind of like, we're the Piercing Pessimist podcast sometimes, and I just think that we're realists.
I mean, I don't think that we can really do much to change our personalities. And I think that one of the things that long-term listeners like about the show is that we're ourselves, and not everyone's going to like that, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I like you, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you for starting 2025 with us. Thanks for listening to the Piercing Wizard podcast. Anything else you'd like to say?
I think that I said it all, Ryan.
Yes, you did, and more.
Yeah.
All right. Well, bye.
Bye.
For more information about the show, visit piercingwizardpodcast.com or like Piercing Wizard Podcast on Facebook. For more info about your host, visit precisionbodyarts.com or search Ryan PBA on Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr. If you enjoy the show, you can subscribe on iTunes, Apple Podcast, and Google Play. Music by Benny B. Blanco. Show copyright 2017, Precision Body Arts LLC, all rights reserved.